Hello, everyone. My name is Sean Dyon. I'm the Director of Strategic Alliances here at HID.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eleanor Falla, Senior Product Manager with Microsoft Security.
And today we're going to discuss breaking the code with data-driven insights into organizational failure in adopting passkeys. Now, there's something that we know in the industry we're all very aware of. 70+% of organizations, of data breaches with organizations, are directly related to compromised credentials. Now, with that stated, we also know that 76% of organizations still use username and passwords as a primary authentication method. And we see on average about 40% of organizations use MFA or non-phishing resistant MFA as part of their authentication mix as well. So, Eleanor, my question to you is, what does Microsoft see and how can organizations be able to, what blockers they have for phishing-resistant authentication, and what can they do to overcome those barriers or those blockers?
Definitely. Thanks, Sean. So across Entra, we are seeing that over 40% of users actually have MFA enabled and are using MFA today. So that we're making some really great progress, but we've still got a lot of work to do, right? And when we're thinking about barriers for adoption, one of the main things is that passkeys on mobile and third parties are still very new experiences, right? So customers are still evaluating these features, still waiting for these products to mature, and we get it. And we're going to be continuing to add additional functionality there as well. Another key theme is that legacy and on-prem solutions tend to slow down or hinder the adoption of passwordless solutions. But really the biggest theme that we're seeing is a lack of formal strategy or lack of knowing where to start in the change management process. So customers know that they want to get to phishing-resistant authentication, but haven't really prioritized how to do that yet. And so Microsoft is building out some deployment guidance for passwordless solutions, and we're showing you a little bit of a sneak peek of that today. This will actually be published in the coming weeks. So going to the next slide, we're talking through our phased approach here for passwordless solutions. First step is really determining your user personas. So on the right-hand side of the slide, you can see some different types of groups that we have identified at Microsoft. It's definitely best to start with easier groups of users and make the impact that you can, then move on to more difficult scenarios later on. Device readiness is a big one, right? Think about the types of devices that you have across your enterprise landscape. For example, if you plan to use mobile passkeys, some older versions of Android and iOS don't support passkeys, so that's a good thing to consider. Think about like what devices are ready and where you can actually move to passwordless solutions quickly and where there may need to be some device upgrades as well. Then it comes to actually registering users for phishing-resistant credentials. Again, starting with smaller groups and start communication campaigns and start registering folks for MFA or passwordless options. Entra ID also has a registration campaign feature where you can prompt people to set up Authenticator, and you can start with targeted campaigns for specific user groups and define timelines for those communications as well. Once you start to have folks registered, then it's all about driving usage. So continuation of reminders and communications and really driving the usage of those passwordless credentials. Once you start to see an uptick in usage, then it's time to think about enforcement. And you can use things like conditional access to actually enforce phishing-resistant and passwordless solutions for specific accounts and end user groups. So I know I've talked a lot about kind of the Microsoft side of things, but Sean, I would love to hear more about how HID is working with Microsoft Entra ID to help customers with this phased approach.
You make some very key points there as part of the phased approach for adoption. And very much at HID, we think about things, or I like to think about things from a crawl, walk, run point of view and perspective. And so as part of this, I'm excited to announce, as part of through partnership with Microsoft, we have 2 new integrations that are going to help organizations as part of their strategy to adopt or to become passwordless and to become phishing resistant end-to-end. We do that through 2 integrations. The first one is called the external authentication methods, and that's really the getting started point. And that's important as you make that shift or transition to your passwordless journey. That first stop is to make sure that you have the right authentication mix to help that organizations on that journey. And so our integration with external authentication methods enables an organization to use their employee ID badge or physical access control card as an authentication option to get started, so that users get to know the user experience, get to understand it, because it's going to be very similar as they take that card and convert it into a converged credential for passkey authentication. So that's kind of the first step. And we'll talk through a little bit of a demonstration of what that looks like actually in practice. In practice, if I go to a web page, as you see on the screen here, and the username is provided, the next thing that happens as the user goes through the authentication journey with Entra ID is that they select HID as an authentication method. Once they select HID, there's a redirect that takes place. And so you see HID's authentication login screen to complete the authentication workflow. The user simply taps their badge, and that completes the authentication process. So now the user has access to the application for which they had requested. Now with HID, you have choice of different hardware credentials. So it can be a employee ID badge or a physical access card, for example, or it could even be a security key. We provide the most choice, flexibility, and options for organizations to choose when using hardware as part of their authentication mix. And we help organizations become phishing resistant end-to-end through our partnership with Microsoft, which leads to the next integration. The next integration is the FIDO APIs. What that enables organizations to do from day one is to be able to register the security credential as a FIDO authenticator. And once they do that, all through HID's platform, they then are able to convert or make that switch from a badge physical access type of authentication directly to the passkey authentication from desktop right on through to the enterprise applications and services. Eleanor, tell me a little bit about measuring success, what that looks like, and what that means for organizations, and how they can go through that process as part of the rollout.
Definitely. Well, first of all, love to see the partnership here. We're super happy to see HID's EAM and FIDO2 API's integration, so love that. But when we think about measuring success and adoption and tracking usage of passwordless solutions, there are a couple of things that we like to think about. One is when you're measuring adoption, you're more so measuring registration and enforcement successes and failures. And you can utilize things like user registration detail reports, which will identify where users have registered successfully and maybe they're ready for enforcement. And you can target communications at users who are not yet registered and really get them to get registered and onboarded. And use things like conditional access reporting workbooks where you can track successes and failures of phishing-resistant CA policies. And you can actually assist users with those high number of failures, so really pinpoint where there might be some issues. And another key area is supportability, right? So make sure you're planning deployments with support teams and putting levers in place where you can either ramp up or ramp down the deployment speed based on the sort of support or help desk volume that you're receiving. So that's just a few things that we're thinking about in terms of measuring success, right? You want to see higher adoption, low failures. So yeah, and if you're interested in learning more about all of this, we have also put out what we're calling the Passwordless funnel article that can be found at aka.ms/passwordless funnel.
That's awesome. And so working together with Microsoft, we're helping organizations make the shift right to go from their standard authentication process to a passless journey that includes phishing resistant end-to-end across the entire enterprise to make that simple, easy, frictionless, and convenient for all users, whether it's a standard user or even from an administrative perspective as part of the adoption and rollout process. A couple things I'd like to quickly note. We do have, if you want to learn more about HID, we are in the Azure Marketplace, so you can look us up and find our authentication service there listed, as well as the other offerings that we also have in the Microsoft Marketplace. Thank you for your time today. I hope you enjoyed the material here within. And thank you, Eleanor, for joining us as part of this discussion.
Thanks for having me, Sean, and look forward to seeing everybody on their deployments of passwordless solutions.